Hey everyone, it's Randall here, and tonight we are going to be talking about why 19 days is the magic number when it comes to selling your house. And really, this seminar is all about timing, how to look at the different times when you can list your house, and how that affects what your timeline looks like, what the value of your house is going to, how that's going to change, and what benefits you have to the different times that you're going to list. Let's get started. I'm going to pull up the presentation. Give me one moment here and we'll just get it shared. Okay, hopefully you can see that. And I am going to make this one small. Perfect. Okay, so as you can see, the seminar is called the 19-Day Local Advantage. And really what this is about the spring window that most sellers miss. And if you're thinking about listing in 2026, this is how you can get it right. There is a reason that people say the best time to list is spring. And that's what we're going to kind of demonstrate tonight. We're going to use a little bit of real data so that you can see why that is. Here's the truth. The 19-day truth is that homes in 2025, and of course we haven't hit 2026 yet, so we're going to use 2025 data, but homes that were listed in the Lehigh Valley in 2025 in May sold on average in about 19 days. Most of those homes closed in about 30 to 45 days. That means they closed typically in June timeframe, mid to end of June, even the first week of July. And if that was your timeline and you were waiting to sell your house so that you could purchase another house, that means that you're shopping for a new house end of July, beginning of August, maybe a little bit sooner depending on your closing. And that really is going to give you the peak inventory. So you, as a buyer, have the most choice. You're hitting just the very beginning of the market as far as when it peaks for sellers to have the most buyers out shopping. So you're going to get the benefit on both ends. And that's why it's so important to time this correctly. If you sell your home quickly and you list in that May timeframe, then you don't have endless showings. You're not trying to find that perfect buyer when they may not actually be out in the market just yet if you list a little bit sooner. And number two, like I said, you get to shop smarter. You get to browse and buy when there's the most choices available on the market. Most people don't really think about both ends of it. And if you're just a little bit off, it changes the way your plan and your timeline are going to look. Here's a little bit of a graph. This shows you you can really see the difference in inventory, and this is obviously data from last year. But look where we are here in May. We're at 807, and that's really close to where we are in June and July. So you're already into the summer market in May. But here in April, you're just coming into it. So April would be an okay time to list too. Most buyers, if you were thinking about shopping in June or July, most buyers would wait if you needed a little bit of a longer closing, but you really shouldn't plan for much more than 60 days. By the time buyers are making an offer on your house, they're wanting to move in that time frame. You can see over here, if we look at March is a little bit lower. And then in August, it starts to peter out a little bit. And the reason is that more buyers are on the market in the summertime because families have children are out of school. That's the time to either move school districts or to pack and move. They've got kids home to help them. And of course, the weather is better that time of year. So you're getting even people who don't have children wanting to move during those months, especially in places where we live, like the Northeast. Market looks a little bit different in other places, but that's not really, that's not really what we want to talk about today. For us, this is what's important. Here are the average days on market, and you can see this graph goes from 2021 to 2025, and it's kind of a crazy graph. Generally speaking, if you had to say there's kind of a line across here, maybe around 25 days if you were going to put the average in there. But if you look at this the days on market, as this goes up, that means you're going to be on the market longer. And of course, as this goes down, your home is selling faster. Look how fast it was selling here back here in April and May, June, July, August of 2022. This was probably when the market was the fastest. Now, again, this is an average. So yes, homes during this time were selling, some of them in 2 or 3 days, but on average, we were seeing this maybe 12-day mark here. And then again, it peaks in December, comes back down in the summer. There's the December time frame, summer, and then December of this year. And this really speaks to what the market is starting to do here in the Lehigh Valley. And I think this is a good slide, good opportunity for me to describe that a little bit so that everyone can understand what's going on in our market specifically. The Lehigh Valley has always lagged behind other markets. So when you hear national news and you're hearing about what the real estate market is doing, it probably isn't doing that here in the Lehigh Valley. It may eventually do that. It may eventually follow suit, but the Lehigh Valley is a little bit of a microcosm and it behaves differently. We have always kind of been in many ways lagging because we're doing everything a little bit later. And sometimes that's a good thing. And I'll tell you where we are right now. So we are slowly moving into what is called a buyer's market. And the difference between a buyer's market and a seller's market really just has to do with the biggest indicator of that is the days on market. It's the easiest one for people to understand. But what it really just means is who has more power, more negotiating power in the transaction. Now, in a perfectly balanced market, buyers and sellers have equal negotiating power. That's what we typically look at when a house, and believe it or not, this sounds crazy because houses have sold so quickly lately, but a balanced market is 6 months. 6 months on the market. So imagine that you listed your house January 1st and it didn't sell until the end of June. That seems absolutely crazy, but that is what a balanced market is. And in the seller's market that we've had, and I know that I'm sure that you'd have to be under a rock not to have known about what's been being talked about in the news. Properties are selling so quickly, and not only that, but properties that are really not very well maintained, they're not well staged, they're not priced well. They were still getting multiple offers in this super hot market, and those offers were great offers. And so with the amount of competition that was out there, we started to see a lot of cash offers. So parents were helping their children by pulling the equity from their homes so that their children could make cash offers. There were some programs out there through some lenders and whatnot where they were helping to make cash offers, offers that basically were not contingent upon getting a mortgage. And then, of course, the person would get one later. But we were not seeing inspections. Things were just kind of crazy. And as you can imagine, who had all the power in that market? The sellers did. We started to see interest rates change. August of 2022, interest rates went up from that 3-ish% mark to somewhere in the 6 range. And that shocked the market very quickly. Buyers who were in the market kind of took a pause. The properties they were looking at were no longer as affordable. And we kind of had to normalize a little bit. So we had a little bit of a pause in late 2022. And then we came back. Buyers said, well, I still need to buy a house. Let's keep on going. Let's find that right house for us. Maybe they adjusted what they were looking for. The point I'm trying to make is that as we change factors in the market, in that case, it was the interest rate, a little bit of the power started to shift back towards the buyers. It was really imperceptible. As a real estate agent, I don't know that buyers and sellers felt it so much in 2022, but as a real estate agent, we saw it coming. The first thing was that you started to see inspections come back. Honestly, before you even saw inspections come back, we give each other feedback on listings that we've shown. And during the really hot time, No agent would ever put a negative remark, even if your house was falling down and it had a hole in the living room floor. They would not say anything negative about your listing. And the reason was because even if their buyers hated it, they might still have to circle back around and put an offer on it because there was just nothing available. In August of 2022, we started to see the comments were coming back. If you had a stinky house that smelled like animals, people were going to say your house was really stinky. My buyers didn't like it. So that was kind of a back end indicator. And then, of course, the front end was the inspections starting to come back. And thank goodness our inspectors, our partner inspectors, were kind of thin on work for a little while there. So it was really tough for them to stay in business. And I'm really glad that we're starting to see that too, because I believe that you really need an inspection to buy a house. It's kind of a good thing to have. So anyway, moving on, as we went through, we thought we were going to see a little bit more of a push towards a buyer's market, and it didn't quite happen. I mean, we're at the end of 2025, and I would say that the Lehigh Valley is in, there's really about four phases for this. The Lehigh Valley is in maybe phase one, maybe phase two. Phase one is where buyers start to take back some of their power. Phase two, we start to see days on market increase. Phase three, we start to see price reductions. And then phase four is a full-on buyer's market where properties are sitting on the market closer to that 6-month mark that I was talking about. So that's a little bit of an aside just about the market, but as we come into 2026, we are definitely moving into that phase two, and if not phase three, depending on the property. So it is something to think about if you're considering whether or not you want to list in 2026 or 2027. You might want to make that push for 2026 because we really feel like we're moving into that buyer's market here in the Lehigh Valley. Other places in the country, most of the rest of the country is already in phases three and four. In fact, the Poconos and Bucks County, they're there already. They're already seeing the price reductions, long days on the market, etc. Okay, back to the 19-day timeline. Let's look at the math. If you list in May, as you've seen with the numbers, you get your strategic spring timing when buyers are most active. They're coming out from winter. They've known that they want to buy. They were getting ready all winter long. They've been thinking about it. They're excited and they're motivated. That's why May is such a great time. If you list a little bit later in the summer, those buyers might be a little bit fatigued, maybe a little bit less excited about properties that they're going to see. 19 days on the market, that's what we discussed. That was the average in 2025. We do expect that to be a little bit longer, but the number is still going to be less than in other previous months. We can anticipate a 30 to 45 day closing. That is really not going to change. That indicator stays pretty much the same. It's about how long it takes for a mortgage company to finish your financing and get everything buttoned up, get the title work done, we get the inspections done, all of the negotiations, and everybody can get to closing in about that amount of time. On the back end of this sale, if you sell during this timeline, you then get to shop peak inventory. So you can browse those 800 plus homes in June and July when there's maximum choice. Then you have a little bit of negotiating power because there's more than one house that you may want to purchase. Not only that, when it comes to negotiating power, forgot what I was going to say there for a second, but you're going to have all the cash from your sale. So you become either a cash buyer or a much stronger prospect. So that also helps you get ahead when it comes to making an offer on the house that you want. So let's talk about what happens if you list a little bit later. And, listen, there's really no wrong answer. There is a strategy for every timing. Whether you're going to list in December, you can list, I don't recommend listing the day before Christmas, but there's a strategy for everything. And there's a buyer in every market. So let's see what happens if you list in June. You're selling during peak competition with 830 other listings or more. And when we price your house, when we look at where we're going to price your house, one of the indicators that we look at is what is your competition? You have to you have to promote yourself as the best and most valuable property in your space. So in order to do that, you have to be well priced and you have to be perfectly staged. And in order to do that, you've got to beat the competition. So when there's more competition, that becomes harder to do. So you could give back a little bit of um, that little bit of that extra negotiating power that you would have if you listed just a little bit sooner. If you list in July, there's even more competition. More people have come on the market. You'll close in August and September. And then by the time you're shopping for a house, there's going to be even less available. People are, getting their kids back into school. If they haven't listed, they may not be listing until the following year. So there's a little bit less variety out there for you to choose from. And that's really why we're saying May is the strategic window, because when you push it in either direction, you're going to mess up that timeline. And when I say mess up, I mean, again, there are strategies for each time of year. If you're thinking about at a different time of year, let me know. We can talk about how to position your house properly for that time of year in that particular season. Okay, let's talk about what if you list a little bit earlier. So let's say, Randall, I don't want to, wait until everybody's out there in May. There was almost 800 people in May. Let me list in March and April. So that's absolutely something that you can do. The trade-off is that you, on the other end, may be shopping before peak inventory hits in June or July. But we also have to think, we have to consider what is your strategy for buying another house. Are you going to wait until you sell? Do you need to do that? Are you going to buy a house first? Are you going to live somewhere temporarily, or are you going to try to close on the same day, which of course we do quite a bit. So that aspect of it can really change what your strategy is and when is the right time for you to list and when it isn't. Again, if you do sell, there are other fewer options. In March and April, inventory is about 25% lower for those peak months. So although you would have fewer choices as a shopper, there are fewer other competition. There's fewer competition out there. So, really depends. And if you're going to be moving out of state, especially to some place that's warm, you may want to be shopping in the March and April timeframe and not shopping in that June or July. And that's where the consultation part of this really comes in. It's important to talk to someone in the real estate industry who understands the pros and cons of listing at different times of the year, and then who can get you in contact with if you're going to move out of state to a real estate expert in that area, so that we can kind of match things up and get you the best timeline that works for you. Okay, so let's say you've decided you do want to list in May. You're convinced I've made a good argument for this. What does that timeline look like? Well, number one, you're going to start preparing in December. And if you're here in this seminar, that is what you're doing. We're thinking about it, we're planning, and we're making the decision to move forward for this spring. That's really all you have to worry about in December. There's plenty of other things with the end of the year and the holidays. That's all you need to do. It's a thought process. It's nothing really more. Now, in January, make your New Year's resolution that you're going to start on this process and get everything done so that you don't feel rushed. I would do a pre-inspection. Depends whether there's snow on the ground or not. You might want to wait a little bit on that, but still a little bit on the earlier side. I would do a pre-inspection and I would begin decluttering. And I'll get into those a little bit more in a second. In February, you're going to start doing some of the small repairs and maybe big repairs that were noted on the pre-inspection report. You're going to deep clean and you're going to paint. And those two go hand in hand. Obviously, you're going to clean before you paint. In March, you're going to continue that. You're going to finish any odds and ends that you had going. Kind of depends what the weather's like in March. It could really go either way. But in April, we're going to be ready to get the landscaping done. plant some flowers, get the yard looking nice, power wash the house, and then we're going to have the professional photos done. And that is when the house looks absolutely the best. You've got really green grass, the flowers are in bloom, the sun is shining. Um, if you ever look at pictures of properties when they're listed in the summer versus when they're listed on a cloudy day in the winter, it's night and day. Same house looks totally different. Looks like a happy house versus a sad house. And that's something sometimes you just can't avoid that if you list in winter. There just aren't enough sunny days to get those great pictures. We can do a little bit with the magic of editing, but there's only so much you can do. And then of course in May you're going to list your home. So as it turns out, there's 6 months of planning before you list your home. I mean, who knew? Everybody probably just thought you list your home. Oh, I'll list it next month. I'll do some cleaning and I'm ready to go. But it really starts much sooner than that. And I think that's why we see so many people plan for a spring sale and they don't actually list until July or August because they haven't fully given enough time to all of the different steps in the process. Here's and in fact, this is exactly what I'm talking about with this next slide. This is the I will start in spring mindset. And listen, I'm one of these people. I'm thinking if I have to be somewhere at 1 o'clock, I'm going to be leaving the house at 12:55. If I have to be there at 5 a.m., I'm going to be leaving the house at 4:55. I am perpetually late. I try not to be, but it's just my nature. So, but I understand this. So the problem is, like I said, if you start planning in April, you're going to be rushed to list. You're not only going to be rushed to list, but you really have to be on point because you are going to be competing with the most number of other listings. So let's just say that your house is pretty much ready to go and you're able to get it done. You list in June and July. We get it out there with these 800 plus other listings. Now you're going to close in July and August. The inventory's going down. You may have to settle on the other end for a property that isn't exactly everything you wanted because you now have pressure to get in because you've sold your house a little bit later and there's less selection. So again, that's why it's better to start a little bit sooner. All right, here's a little bit of detail about that timeline that we talked about, things to do in January. So obviously you're going to make the final decision. If you are ready to move forward, this is where you commit to that. If you have more than one decision maker, if you're husband and wife, wife and wife, however your family looks, whoever it is who's making that decision, get on the same page. Talk about what needs to be done and make sure that you're both thinking the same things and wanting to move in the same direction. I mean, that's really the most important part before you start anything else. Number two slash number three, really, this could go in any direction that you want. You know how cluttered your house is. For some of us, the pre-listing inspection is fine. You can do that as is, but for some of us, we need to declutter first. Kind of depends how much stuff you have, whether the inspector is going to be able to see things. So decluttering, I'll just talk about that one first. Decluttering can be absolutely overwhelming. We know this, but I'm going to do an entire seminar on this later. But the reason that you want to start this right away is that I encourage people to think about what it looks like to shop through another home. People are going to be opening your closets, so you can't stick it all in there like you do when you have guests coming over. And besides which, you're planning on moving after you sell your house. So you don't really have to worry about where am I going to go with this stuff. The things that you're keeping, they can be packed up in boxes. You know, buyers are not turned off by boxes in your garage. They know you're moving. That doesn't scare them. Whether they want to see your closet that's completely packed to the gills and falling down out the door when they open it, that is a little bit more off-putting. So start packing, start decluttering, think about things to donate, think about things you're going to throw out. Depersonalize. That's a very traditional piece of advice, but it definitely holds true. And don't think about redecorating because the likelihood is that whoever is going to buy your house probably has different taste than yours anyway, even if you have impeccable taste. Trust me, maybe the buyer does not and they don't like what you've done. Um, and then also, less is really more in photographs. So the less you have, the better. And you're going to thank me later. Just go one room at a time. The next part is schedule the pre-listing inspection. Now, you may be thinking, okay, I'm the seller. I'm not paying for an inspection. This lady is crazy. I get it. I get it. Listen, I'm also very cheap when it comes to things like that. But I have learned over the years that there are certain things worth paying for. And I honestly think this is one of them. First of all, our inspection companies give us a little bit of a discount for a seller inspection. It's not the same as a buyer inspection. They're coming in, and what they're doing is they're giving you a list of things that the buyers are going to look at. And I encourage you to think about this from the buyer's perspective. If you are buying a house and you say, okay, I like this house, I'm thinking about making an offer on it, your agent brings you the seller's disclosure. They also bring you a copy of an inspection report. And they say, hey, this seller had an inspection. They found X, Y, and Z. These items are already checked off. When you go to make that offer, you're going to feel more confident. You're going to feel like that seller has taken more care of their home, and you're going to be more apt to make a stronger offer, maybe without inspections. And not only that, but buyers will typically try to negotiate when they get an inspection done. And they'll try to get a couple $1,000 really for any kind of repairs. So even if you don't think you have major repairs, you may be looking at a couple $1,000 negotiation if you wait. But if you spend a few $100s to do the things up front, you can save yourself that headache and you can really set yourself apart from those other listings that are out there to kind of push you over the edge and make you the top choice. Last one on the list here is interviewing agents. And of course, if you haven't already chosen an agent, January is the time to start thinking about that. And you should probably look for someone with 25 plus years of Lehigh Valley experience and deep market knowledge, according to my presentation. And, wink, wink, I think I know somebody who would be happy to help you. But seriously, if you have a friend or loved one who does real estate, or if you need a recommendation for someone who's out of state, please let me know. I'm happy to make recommendations, and I will not represent you if I don't work in your area. I will hand you off to someone who will do a good job for you, who's more familiar with the area. Okay, that's January. What would you do in February? Well, February, you've got your pre-inspection. You're going to take care of the repairs. And this could be all the stuff from the leaky faucet, the deck railing, whatever you have. Anything you can check off the list is going to be amazing for when you go to list. You're going to paint key rooms. This is something, again, I would talk to your real estate agent. Sometimes you don't need to paint. It depends what the paint looks like, but every room needs to be neutral. I'm sitting in my office is currently painted light purple, and I would absolutely paint this. Again, I would paint it a neutral color. I don't prefer neutral colors, but to sell the house, I absolutely would. Makes all of the buyers feel more comfortable. Deep clean everything. Here's another little story, a little anecdote. When I bought my house, we came through for an open house. And I vividly remember going in the basement in the room where our furnace was. Well, at the time it wasn't our furnace, but there was an oil tank, the furnace, and you could have eaten off the floors in the furnace room. This house was absolutely immaculate. And that is one of the reasons that we bought it, because it shows how much you care. Sometimes you can't see the dirt in the pictures. Pictures might look lovely, and then you get there and there's cobwebs and the baseboards are dirty, and maybe the doorknobs are sticky. If you have kids, I get it, but try to get it as clean as you can. The buyers will definitely notice that. Then the first fun thing on the list is research some target areas for when you buy. Selling is not that much fun. It can be a little bit sad. It's a lot of work, but the buying part, that's just shopping. Now you get to go find a house that someone else has put a lot of effort into getting ready for the market. Figure out where you want to go. Maybe get a list of open houses from your real estate agent and just go visit some open houses. See what's out there. The more you see, the more you will get a feel for what the market is. Okay, we're on to the March and April timeframe. This is going to be your final push for decluttering, staging. You're going to put everything away and try and keep things. By this time, you'll be able to pack things up that you don't need anymore. You're not going to need your Valentine's Day decorations again until you move into the new house. Pack them up, seal the box, label it, put it in the garage, basement. You're good to go. Mid-March, we're going to start to see some outside work being done. You can power wash, mulch, put some flowers out. And then by late March, we should know what the market is going to be doing for your April and May. We'll have a better idea of that. So we can talk more about your pricing strategy with some actual numbers and details and real data about what the market is doing at that time. Late in April, we're going to have our professional photography session. We're going to leave a couple of days open for that just in case we have rain. We really want to get a nice sunny day. Not only helps the pictures on the inside, but obviously it's very difficult to get good exterior photos, which is the first thing that buyers see. Then that's it. Early May, we're going to list your home. And once you are done with all of that work, the goal is to get it sold in that 19-day time frame. That might be a little longer in 2026, but we're going to get it sold as quickly as possible. And that's where my team takes over. And you can now breathe a sigh of relief. We'll bring you some offers. You'll pick the best one, and then you move on again to the fun part, the shopping for your new home. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about June and July and why that is the best time to shop, since we were talking about the fun part of this whole project. So when you close in June, you're not just buying whatever's out there, you have the most selection. So when you have the most selection, it's not just that you have more choices, it's that the buyer pool is spread out. Everybody's going to like something a little bit different. So there's also less competition. So the other thing is when you're buying at the end of the summer, if those sellers need to sell, maybe they did list in May, maybe they didn't list at the right price, maybe they got to the market a little bit late, but they need to sell before school starts because they also have to move, get their kids back in school, whatever it is, whatever their reason is. You're now in a stronger position because they have a little bit of pressure to sell. So they're going to be more negotiable to accept probably an offer that's a little bit stronger for you. And then also, you're going to have time to be selective because we're going to still see inventory. Really, the inventory is strong through September and even into October because the weather's still nice. So there's many reasons why this is the best time to go shopping. Okay, so what if your timeline is different? I mean, some of you may be thinking, okay, this is great, but that doesn't fit my specific situation. Well, option number one is you can target that September and October timeframe. If there are lots of people who don't time the market correctly, this advice is not something that everyone follows or that everyone is even privy to. So a lot of people are shopping in the September and October timeframe. The fall market is still very nice. Properties still photograph well, they show well, the weather is still good, and there's lots of people who are still listing their homes in that timeframe. Option two, if 2026 feels like it's too much for you, Aim for May of 2027 instead and just flip the script and go all the way to the next year. And listen, there's other times of year there are even people say, "Oh, I don't want to list in November because of the holidays." I have sold houses in that time frame, many houses, and although it can take longer, if you're prepared for that, it can also be a good time to sell because the buyers in that market are very motivated. Think about what it would take for you to continue shopping for a house over the Thanksgiving and Christmas timeline. Um, you must need one if you're shopping. Most buyers take off during that period. So, there's a balance for everything. All right, so planning your purchase. That's just a little bit more about this because we didn't talk too much about this, but I do just want to touch on it. So, research the neighborhoods while you have the time to do this. Don't wait until we're looking at properties on the MLS because you're not going to be able to look at everything. So maybe narrow it down, drive through the areas. I always say drive through different times a day. What does it look like in the morning? What does it look like at lunchtime? And what does it look like later at night or on the weekends? I mean, the entire vibe of a neighborhood can totally change. And you're going to see that when you drive by, spend a little time there. Traffic could be an issue. That could be something that you see, or it could just be, unsavory activity that you're not really comfortable with in the evenings, or maybe you see that it's an active um, playground on the weekend and that's perfect for you. These are the kind of things you'll see when you research the neighborhoods and you physically go there and spend some time. Visit open houses. There's going to be open houses year round. You'll be able to see those whenever you want. Think really hard about your must-haves and your nice-to-haves. So make your list. A good real estate agent is going to probably ask you these questions to start with, and then hone in on your real answers as you go. Because what often happens is people have a list, they have a list of everything that they'd like to have, but then they start shopping and they start compromising on things. And if your agent is paying attention, they're going to be making note of what things are perhaps a little bit negotiable if other things are present. And sometimes that's, as simple as, well, I absolutely have to have an island in my kitchen. But if you find a perfect house with a big backyard and a pool, now that island isn't quite so important anymore. That's what I'm talking about there. And then lastly, you can get a pre-approval really anytime. You don't need to wait until you're closer to shopping. A pre-approval um, they can do this with a soft credit check, which means it doesn't ding your credit. And when you are finally ready to apply for a mortgage, then you have a 2-week window to shop and it won't affect your credit but one time. But when you're looking this early, you just need that pre-approval. All you're doing is telling them what your numbers are. So you're saying, I work and I make this much money and I have this much debt. And they're taking you on that word. It's not verified, but it's going to give you an idea of what you can afford. Okay. So the 19-day advantage, we've got speed. You're going to sell fastest in that timeline. Timing, you're going to time the market so that you can buy at the best time. If you begin to prep now, it is not going to feel stressed. You're going to be ready to go. And then you are going to be in the best position on both the buying and the selling side. And that's really what we're trying to do here. Okay. Your action steps to take away. So, number one, make the decision that this is actually something you want to do. Next, start planning immediately if you've decided you do want to list in 2026. It matters if you start now versus starting in, the end of March. Schedule a pre-listing inspection. It does not have to be in January. I have January on here. I mean, the sooner you get it done, the better. But I would say more important than that is do a walkthrough with your agent. Hire your agent first because they are a resource that is available to you, and they should have. If you do a good job in hiring your agent, they should have a depth of knowledge that there's no reason for you to have that depth of knowledge. You don't need to do it by yourself. That's what you're paying an agent for. And that's what their expertise is in. So get the help as soon as you can. No reason not to start soon. Okay, number four, map your specific plan. So figure out what your plan is going to look like. Where are you going to go? What do you want your timeline to look like? And then number five, if you have any questions, give me a call. I'm happy to offer advice and talk to you about your specific timeline or any questions that you might have. Okay. Thank you for joining us tonight. If anybody has any questions, I didn't see any questions in the chat, but certainly contact me at any time. And next week, we are going to be doing the 90-day declutter, what to keep, donate, or toss, and why it can actually save you thousands to get started on that now. It's something that a lot of people don't think about. Okay, thank you so much for joining us and have a wonderful night. Bye, everyone.